This episode is sponsored by Big Bull Productions and their feature film, Juvenile Delinquents. Hello and welcome back to Film Pro Productivity and Success, the podcast that helps film professionals and other creative people to live a more focused, effective and happy life. My name is Carter Ferguson and this is episode 68, Scams, Lies and Double Dealing, Part 2. Thanks for joining me again for part 2 of this two-parter on scams that target creative people. But if you've not heard the first show, then please go back to episode 67, where I cover the bait and switch, disinformation, half-legit agents, fake social media, travel cost scams, fake social media accounts, catfishing, and scam texts. Without further ado, though, let's get into part 2. I want to start by saying that it's not just money that you can get scammed out of. In the Collabo Haters episode, that's episode 20, Bad Collaborations, I talk about people hijacking your reputation to gain credibility and other things. And it's something that I really hate, but something I've had happen to me several times. Most recently, an international film project used me and my resume to gain favour with a financier. When I left the project, however, the project continued partly based on my reputation which brought it together. And this had actually happened before to me on a short film that raised some money based on my involvement, but that I was never actually involved in any way at all. And there's an incredibly dodgy filmmaker in Scotland. Write into me if you think you know who I'm talking about. Possibly not who you're thinking of, but who has more than once used my name to trick people into getting involved in his projects. Why me? Well, I was for a time involved in a lot of filmmaking projects, either helping out directly in a kind of producer capacity, or I was advising on. I used to give advice to people that were doing these sort of things. So my name was out there, and I think it was just an easy target. And I was already aware of this guy, as years before it turns out that as I'd done a production called The Battle of Stirling Bridge, a large-scale outdoor theatre piece which took place on the esplanade of Stirling Castle in 1997, and I did all the fights for it. And this person used an image from that show, a show that he had no involvement in whatsoever, to promote his own dodgy production training program that he had on. And more recently, though, he used my name to try and borrow firearms from an armourer friend of mine, name-dropping me along the way, and also action vehicles. And although he didn't successfully get any weapons, I believe, he did actually succeed in getting the action cars. And people like this do exist in the world, and they are who I refer to quite bluntly as liars. A liar begins with making falsehood appear like truth, and ends with making truth itself appear like falsehood. William Shenstone, unquote. More recently, this same guy, he's still around, has stolen shots from other movies and put them in his own, and I have found that actors and crew, especially those just starting out, fall for his antics again and again because they are often desperate and therefore don't really scratch and sniff the surface of apparent film producers like him. I do, however, scratch at them and they absolutely stink. These are similar in many ways to the catfishers that I was talking about, but these are people that will fool you face to face with their deceptions, and the deceptions can be complex, but more often than not, they're very thin and amount to probably something like a fake IMDb profile and some very big talk. And these people can face off these lies incredibly well. They can be convincing. I've met this guy and he's actually kind of charming, but he just lies constantly. Everything about him is based on lies. And please remember on the IMDb front that is a website updated not by the film companies that hire the people and put the things together, although they do some of it, but by anyone at all that wants to sign in and change the details. It's exactly the same way that Wikipedia works, which can be updated by the public. So never take these sites at face value. Always look for a reference or ask for one if needs be. If you are suspicious, stay away. Who can I trust? You have to invest in someone, and chances are you're probably going to invest in somebody who's going to deceive you. I've been conned a couple of times, but now I'm a little bit more savvy. Maggie Gyllenhaal, unquote. A director friend of mine, Tim Courtney, warns us of another common problem for creatives, and that is plagiarism. He messaged me this earlier, I quote, "I saw your call out for people that have fucked you over, and I've got a classic where a band's management got in touch about a music video saying they really loved one me and my pal did for another band, asked us to pitch for their band, but we didn't get it. When their video was finally released, they'd just remade our video with a few tweaks and a bigger budget. We tried to get legal involved. We were told they'd drag it out and would go bankrupt before it even got to court. That band went on to win several very big prizes for the video." I'm just going to jump in here and say that I know these prizes, and believe me, they were big, and Tim is a straight up and trustworthy guy. I've also now watched both videos, and he ain't exaggerating. They were very, very similar. And he finished by warning us that copyright means jack shit unless you have the pounds to defend it, unquote. Tim is at the Tim Courtney on Twitter. That's Lee as in Thee as opposed to Lee. So that's the Tim Courtney on Twitter if you want to look him up, and he's a really great director. And Tim sending me that message reminded me of another instance of plagiarism I'd heard about, where a leader at a youth project stole a student's concept for a film and then remade it as his own. So you really must be very wary with your creative work. This is a difficult one, but you just have to have some awareness of it. Control what you can of it, but as Tim said there, copyright means nothing if you don't have the cash to back it up. And when we're talking about this low-level filmmaking stuff, which is commonly where this happens, there probably isn't any money around at all. But be aware of it, and without sowing the seeds of too much paranoia here, I would strongly advise you to look at ways of protecting yourselves. Scripts can be protected by services like Script Vault, and there's other options out there, but I think the Screenwriters Guild of America has got something like that, and there's others around, but these are copywriting scripts. But sometimes your idea will still be seen and stolen. And I must temper all of this by saying that sometimes you just get unlucky and someone else has had the same or a very similar idea to your own at more or less the same time, and such is life. If you want to know more about plagiarism and how to protect yourself from it, though, please look to the show notes. There's an article from the New York Film Academy that I will link to in those show notes on this very topic. Now, if you're a filmmaker, another thing you want to look out for are predatory sales agents. And a sales agent, if you don't know, represents filmmakers who want to distribute their films and who may be first-time directors or directors who work outside of major studio productions. Good sales agents will work with these filmmakers to help develop a strategy for marketing the film that they want to distribute and help make deals on the back of it. With my feature Fast Romance, we very nearly signed with one of these dodgy sales agents, but ducked it just in time. But unfortunately for a friend of mine, however, who made a film that was distributed quite broadly and sold on the shelves of Asda, in fact, that's the UK's Walmart, by the way, represented by the same agent, he never saw a penny from him. And the scam that he got caught up in very definitely was a scam, this. So the money being taken in from the sales by a sales agent with a similar name to the one he had signed with, but when he came to claim it, he discovered it was actually another company represented by another person. I can't recall the exact name, but it was something like London Sales that received the money, but he had signed with an agent called London Sales UK or something like this. I don't fully understand the intricacies of the scam, but he chased one of the people that ran the company, who said that he had to go after the other, and therefore it was running round in circles trying to get a hold of the right person who had the money and who he had a contract with. He signed with one. There was like another partner who also represented another company, and he was run ragged, running between the two of them. And that agency, or both agencies in cahoots, both clearly set up to scam filmmakers. They stole every penny that was made for that film. Nothing gets seen from it. And with Fast Romance, we nearly signed with another sales agent who had a clause in his contract saying that the first £50,000 of any money coming in for that film would go to him. And that film might never even have made 50,000, so we dodged that one as well. From start to finish, Fast Romance was raked by sharks and misfortune. Although the film in itself was never a scam, it never really stood a chance. I gave away every penny I had wrapped up in it, and to this day, I have never seen a penny of return for the effort. My penultimate warning is again for filmmakers, and it's about shady film festivals. A film festival is an organised event which shows a number of films, basically. But what some of you might not realise is that 99 times out of 100, the filmmakers have to pay for their film to be considered. That goes for the big organisations like BAFTA. Not that they run a festival, but if you want to get considered for a BAFTA prize, you have to pay them. And it goes for the small ones as well. This is just a kind of common practice, and that in itself is not the scam. As I say, reputable film festivals need the entry fees to pay for venues, to pay for people to watch and judge the films, and also to advertise the festival when it comes along. And I know many people who are involved in film festivals, but I'm going to say all this stuff about film festivals nonetheless. I could easily do a show just called The Great Film Festival Swindle, as I have my doubts about the validity of a large number of them. And from the little bit of research that I've done on this topic, so do many others. Steve McCartan got in touch on Twitter just yesterday. He said that he'd submitted his film to several festivals via Film Freeway, and one in particular in Ireland had sent the usual letter saying something like, oh, there are so many applicants and the standard is so high, etc., and he didn't think much of it. But then a little bit later, he read an article about festivals not even watching the films, and you can check using the Vimeo stats for the film. So I went in, he says, and had a look, and there it was, staring him in the face. Absolutely no views in Ireland. The only conclusion that he could draw is that they took the fee and they didn't view the film. He said he was annoyed at the time, but thought it's only a tenner, but with the benefit of hindsight, he really should have reported it and challenged it. Perhaps because the fees are so low on some of these, they're banking on people not following up. And I think he's right on that. And just on the back of that story, I want to just jump in here about actors and self-tapes. For those that don't know, the first rung of the audition ladder for many actors these days, especially in film and television, is that you'll be asked to do a self-tape where you're sent a scene, you have to learn the lines, and you have to perform it to camera on your phone, or a lot of actors spend money on good mics and on cameras so they can look as good as possible. And the number of actors that I know, very, very good actors, that do that and then find out they have been unsuccessful in getting the job, and who've told me that their self-tape wasn't viewed, is just astronomical. I reckon maybe sometimes 50% or more of actors that put this time and effort in don't even get the respect of having their audition watched. It's an absolutely disgraceful situation. But anyway, that's slightly off topic. Back on the film festivals, scam, the shady film festivals. I'm not talking about Legitimate film festivals organised and very carefully planned and marketed by people who are passionate about film, or about festivals that play to large audiences and allow your films to be seen and enjoyed and which amplify your profile. I'm talking about the shady film festivals that are set up simply to make money, or who mislead you into believing that they're going to bring you fame and fortune if you get a win. A lot of these wins, in fact, if you get them, mean very little other than making you feel perhaps a little bit better about what you've made. Some even sell their prizes in a kind of pay-to-win setup. Alice D. Cooper sent me this message on Twitter as I was prepping the show. One of my films got selected in a Spanish film festival. Congrats, you won a prize, she heard. But I would only get it if I sent them €360 so they could ship over the trophy. I offered to fly over and get it as it would be cheaper. And that's when they got all shifty. A con festival. And this smacks of a classic pay-to-win scheme, selling you your own prizes at outrageous prices. You must realise too that these prizes mean very little beyond a day or two of social media well-dones from your friends and family. It's what Gillian Dick last week called vanity metrics. You can end up paying a lot of money to film festivals that mean very, very little just to make you feel better about a film that you've already made. And for me, this is not a fair trade. I can't say about these film festivals that they are all scams, but I have a problem with them, and that problem is that film festivals just aren't monitored by a legitimate overseeing body, and they are multiplying exponentially. I'm really not trying to disrespect all small film festivals, but this whole racket needs to be looked at, and I want you to be aware of what you're dealing with before you go dropping a vast amount of cash into your festival campaigns. I know for a fact that some of them are 100% scams, because when we released Dead End to the festival circuit, one of the festivals, a Hong Kong short film festival, which we were very keen to get involved with as the film had mostly been shot in Hong Kong, never actually happened. And this left us with real egg on our face, as many of the cast and crew were Hong Kong based, and we'd told them that it was going to happen. Julian, who was one of the actors in the film, tracked the festival location down at the time it was meant to be on and discovered an empty room in a university. No posters, no films, no people. It was just a scam. This can't be the only instance of a fake film festival set up to target filmmakers. I was sent a really great mini documentary that had been made by filmmakers from California who had attended the Swansea Bay Film Festival in 2010. The Jim Reaper at I Am Jim Page on Twitter was there at the festival the same year, and he described it as an absolute racket. The documentary is quite hard to watch, as you immediately feel the pain of these dedicated filmmakers who travelled thousands and thousands of miles to attend a festival that turned out to be, as Jim says, a racket. Although it took place, the festival had no advertising, so the only people who knew it was on were the other attending filmmakers. The films also had no time slots, so you couldn't easily promote your own film, and the times and locations they were given were changed again and again. The filmmaker's own film, the documentary, was eventually scheduled to... This is the documentary that was in the festival, not the documentary about the festival. I never saw the documentary that was in the festival. But anyway, their documentary was eventually scheduled to take place at the same time as the gala dinner and awards ceremony, for which tickets were bought at a premium price, and the filmmakers were relegated to a small room below that room with the awards screened to them on a TV. And the disrespect showed towards these filmmakers was difficult to watch, and it was a festival run by an egotist, clearly an egotist, called Mr. Binder Singh, that you really have to see to believe. According to the posts about the film on YouTube, Mr. Singh keeps changing his name as well, and I suspect as a serial time waster and chancer, he really has to do that. So I'm going to post a link to this film in the show notes, but here are a few comments I read on YouTube to drive the message home here. Oliver Crocker said, I entered this film festival in 2007 and had exactly the same experience. In fact, they had lost the DVD of my film. I happened to have one on me, or they would have not been able to show it. They also put the lights up 3 times during the screening and didn't play the end credits, so people who had bothered to travel there didn't even get to see their own name on the screen. I really hope your documentary has helped put Binda Singh out of business. Shashwati Talukdar, hopefully I've not totally tortured that name, said, what a horror show. Thanks for making this and posting this. Lots of bogus festivals run by crooked people out there. Filmmakers, beware. James Price wrote, I live opposite the Dylan Thomas Centre, which is where the festival was taking place, and I had no idea this was being held. I am thoroughly ashamed of how these people were treated by the organisers, in inverted commas, of this event. And there's a lot more stuff in there, but I'll finish with this comment from John Weimer. We got ripped off the same year. At least these guys' film got shown, even if no one saw it. We had one of our cast go for another film, and he said our film never even got screened. This, sadly, is a scam, and the guy who runs it is not just rude, but a con man. Beware of any film festival associated with this guy. And this, I'm afraid, is the reality of some film festivals. By all means, apply to them. Spend your money, but do it with your eyes open. And understand, as I said before, that winning an award from a small festival may do nothing more than make you feel better about a film that you've already made. Look at the reviews about the film festivals that you apply for. Both withoutabox.com and Film Freeway have reviews sections. If you've spent a lot of time and money already making your film, then don't waste any more on dodgy festivals. Let me just finish by saying that if you truly believe in your film, then go for it. But if you don't think that your film is genuinely awesome, if in your head you don't think it is, then spend as little money as you can on applications and move on to your next film. And I came to that opinion regarding my own films over time. If I've got a truly incredible film, I do believe that it will open doors and win prizes. If it's meh, then I know it won't. Finally, let me recommend a Facebook group that you should join, and it's called Protect Yourself from Predatory Film Distributors aggregators, and it's moderated by Indie Film Hustle and Alex Ferrari. The group was created as a platform for filmmakers to share information and discuss how to protect themselves from the film aggregator distributor, but now is for all other predatory film distributors. This group highlights what Indie Film Hustle calls the bankrupt reboot scam, and I'll post a link to Indie Film Hustle and their take on this in the show notes. It's the 13th and final scam, I think it is anyway, which I wanted to highlight in these shows, and I'm not going to say much more about it, as frankly Alex Ferrari has this well covered and he understands it far more fully than I do. As you can probably tell though, this amounts to a company taking money in as an aggregator for the filmmaker, middleman, if you will, which you really have to have in certain deals. I think Netflix, you've got to have an aggregator, for example. But then, once they've got the money in, they declare bankruptcy. The distributor situation that kicked this whole thing off is still in process, and there are some signs that filmmakers owed money may still get to see some of it. But as it's still in process, however, I don't want to comment any more on it. But if it's something that concerns you, as well it should, then please go and join that excellent Facebook group. Stephen King wrote that the trust of the innocent is the liar's most useful tool. And for a number of years, possibly still now on occasion, I know that my naivety was taken advantage of by individuals, and it has to be said, in all honesty, by supposed friends too, with no care other than the accumulation of money. The feelings of others to the scammer are less than irrelevant, and I suspect that they revel in their accomplishments with no pangs of guilt at all for the most part. But don't let your keenness or politeness or good heart lead you into trouble in the world of creative scams. You can spot them fairly easily if you are aware of them. So I'll end with these simple pieces of advice. 1. Learn from the stories that I've laid out here. Listen to them and let them heighten your awareness. This isn't by any means all of the scams that I have faced. These are just the ones that I've chosen, and to some extent the ones that I remember. Number 2, be skeptical of anybody who approaches you in this business or these creative businesses. If someone approaches you claiming to be a successful director, producer, executive, or other member of your industry, but is not someone that you or anyone else knows, then do not meet up with them alone until you have verified their credentials and or place of work. Some people are very skillful at name-dropping and assuming industry attitude. This does not mean that they are legitimate. I've been in this industry a long time. I can spot a bullshitter at 100 yards, yet even I can be fooled, if only briefly, by some of these shysters. Ask for the person's business card. If they are what they claim to be, they're going to have one. If you have any suspicions or concerns at all, investigate the person online. Call up the agency or company they are supposed to be working for to find out if that's really true. Also, try and bring a friend with you to your first meetings. Make sure that your family and friends know whenever you have a meeting of this type and where you are going to have it. With some of these people, it just might lead to other darker problems, so stay aware and stay sensible. Number 3, I've said it many times already and I'll say it again, only go into deals with your eyes open. Read and understand the agreements that you're dealing with and never assume, because as they say, it makes an ass out of you and me. And the whole not reading contracts thing, get past it. I had to get past it. When we did Fast Romance with someone working with us that wrongly issued about 2/3 of the contracts, and they had to get sorted out after we'd shot the movie. So me and the DOP Ross went through all of the contracts, sussed them all out, found the mistakes, and reissued 2/3 of them. That actually happened. But that made me realise 2 things. 1, contracts aren't as scary as I thought they were, or as boring, really. And 2, I really can't trust other people to do this. So reading things myself became much more important to me. Lose the fear of contracts. I know it's boring. I know it's not what you want to do, but pick up a contract, read it, and understand it. And if you've got questions, and that's my next point, actually, number 4, don't be afraid to ask reasonable questions. And if they get ratty or annoyed or show their true colours in any way, get the hell out of Dodge. Number 5 is don't be afraid to ask for more time. Never let yourself get railroaded as you are being polite or whatever and you're just going to sign something quickly. Take a day to read over a contract. Don't sign it, then read it after the job. Ask for it to be sent to you and question it if needs be. I personally understand every contract that I issue. If you have a question for a contract I've just handed you, I can answer it. This should be the same for anyone issuing you contracts. What I actually try to do, because it is convenient, I've got to be honest, to get contracts signed in the day. See, getting contracts back from people after you've shot something, it's a nightmare. So I'm kind of going back on what I've just said there, but I will usually send a contract out to people digitally before they have to sign it on the day so they can see what they're getting asked to sign. And then I will give them time to read it and ask me questions about it before they have to sign it. There's just professional ways about going about this. But if you're feeling railroaded, if you're suspicious, if the people that are giving you the contract can't answer questions about it, take your time before you sign it. And that's pretty much all I've got to say on scams aimed at creative professionals. I'm 100% certain there's more of them out there. I'm 100% certain that there's more scams I've come across, but I just couldn't recall them all. There was so much information, it was difficult for me to swallow. But on a more general note, I want to say that the Met Police have something called the Little Book of Big Scams, and you can download that from their website, which I'll link to in the show notes. So if you're concerned about everyday scams, then please give that one a read as well. Now, if I can have your attention for just a few more minutes, I'd like to share a quick interview that I did with a fellow filmmaker, Darren S. Cook from Scruffy Bear Pictures, who is doing very well at the moment, but who kindly took some time out to talk to me about his experiences with a scammer that he'd got caught up with a few years ago. He gives a blow-by-blow account here in just a few minutes of what happened to him, and it's well worth a listen. Here he is.
I had a concept and idea for a feature film, and I was introduced to a, inverted commas, film producer who was based in America and based, luckily, or I don't know if it was luck or whatever, in the town where I live, in Kettering, in Northampton. Mm-hmm. So I was introduced to him, I went down there, and I, at that time, had a huge pack on the feature film, and I thought, I'll go and speak to this guy. I turned up, and I was very nervous. Pitched my film to him, showed him the trailer, showed him the soundtrack, all the concept art, the cartoon, and he basically stood up and said, I'm going to make your film. This is fantastic. I can get you the money. Bearing in mind, this is only $300,000 budget, so it was something nice, something that I thought, great, my film career is going to kick off. So introduced him to a couple of people I know, and he started putting ideas forward, kept telling me he was going back to America, to California, to his office, and he'd do stuff and he'd be back again. And then when he came back, he asked me and my partner, now we just moved up, so Sarah was pregnant with our daughter, she's now 10. We had moved from Ware, near Hertford, up to Northampton, where we're living now, and we had a bit of money left, and we thought, right, let's invest this in the film, let's do something and do something great and do it under our rules. We needed a producer, so we took this guy on. Basically, according to his IMDb page, this is what I love. According to IMDb, this guy was a genius. He was involved in great films. He had credits. He was the man who I thought, yes, this guy's he's going to do it.
Yeah.
We were told you never have to pay any money, not until we get into production. And we thought, Christ, this is even better. This is absolutely amazing. So I started working really hard to get this film going, and one day out of the blue, he phoned me up and said, right, I've got investors, I just need to get some production services going, so would you be in position to give me some money? I went, yeah, of course I can, what do you need? And set it all out for me, told me what I needed. Part of it was to go to the casting director, and she was brilliant. She was absolutely incredible. She got people like Chris Noth from Sex and the City. Mm-hmm. She got us like named actors who literally said, yes, I'd love to do this film. This is great. I gave him. My other half, Sarah, wrote a check for him for 2 lots of money. One was 3,500. The other amount was 2,500. So we gave him the money, and he said, right, I'm going to get on this straight away. Nothing happened for about 8 months. And literally every week I've been up with him, and I go in there with doubts, like, I've just given you a large amount of money, dude, what's happening? I'd always walk out of there with an answer, like, okay, yeah, I'm worrying about nothing. A year on, my film's still not being made. And at this time, he had replaced all the cast, he'd replaced all the crew, he had started working on the script against the writer's permission, had basically got the writers to sign the script over to him and his company. And I was pretty much $6,000 plus $4,000 out of work because I turned down work. He told me not to take any work because we were going to be making our films. I then started questioning him quite seriously about where's my money going, because nothing seems to be happening. And I got the threat, if you're going to question me my work ethic, then we shouldn't be working together, and I'll just take this money as a payment for work I've done so far. It's up to you. And I said, right, I need results in the next 3 months. This is where it started getting interesting. Something at the back of my mind was saying, call up his California office. So I did. I phoned up the office in California where his head office is registered, and I basically found out that nobody there had ever heard of him, his company, or his staff. Never existed. Now, I confronted him about this. I actually went round to his house and knocked on his door, and I said, look, dude, I've just phoned up the office in California. Nobody knows you. No one's heard of you. What's going on? He said, look, who did you speak to? And I said, well, I spoke to this person. He said, oh, no, you should have spoken to this person. I went, oh, what branch do they work at? He said, oh, this branch. And I went, oh, what's their name? And as he said the name, I matched the name. And I said, yeah, I've spoken to her. She's the one who told me, I own this company. I own these facilities. We've never dealt with this person. And if he claims he owes this money or pays this rent, I want to know about it. He slammed the door on my face. I then get an email saying, I need to talk to you. So I met him the following day, and he had written this letter out basically saying, you had no right to do this. You know, there are things going on that you know nothing about. I'm going to get your film, blah, 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 blah. And I said, look, I'm going to give you a month to sort this out. And if you can't make this film happen in a month, I had literally changed my personality. I'd gone from this humble, appreciative bloke to this, I'm really angry. You've taken a lot of money. You've cost me money, and you've cost me more money. And I've had a kid, you know, it's ridiculous. He said, give me a couple of weeks, I'll sort it out. I gave him a couple of weeks, heard nothing from him. And then I get a distressed phone call from his girlfriend at the time, basically saying he was in hospital. And I thought, oh, God, the guy's had a heart attack. She went, no, he's had a stroke. I went, what? She goes, yeah, he's had a stroke. You know, we don't know how long he's going to be out of action. I said, right, I'm coming up to the hospital. And she said, he said, no, don't come up. We'll get an ambulance home. I went, I'll come and pick you up. It's fine. Turned up at the hospital. They weren't there. Went round to his house. He was round there but wouldn't see me. 3 weeks later, he turned up at my doorstep like nothing had happened. And I said, dude, how are you? Come in, sit down. He goes, no, I'm fine. You know, I'm quite a strong person. He was the weediest 5.5 foot knob end I've ever met in my life. There was no muscle on him. Now, he told me that he made a full recovery from a level 1 stroke, and I literally said bullshit straight away, because my mate, who's 6.5 foot and a towering strength of muscle and a bodybuilder, had the mildest of strokes, and it knocked the crap out of him for 18 months. I've seen the effects of a stroke, so I called him out on it, and he said, no, I was fine. It was so mild. I said, but you told me it was level 1. So it got worse and worse and worse, to the point that I found out he had conned 3 other people out of one of 16 grand, one 17 grand, and one person out of 22 grand. So I'd only given 6 grand, and a grand of that had gone to the casting director. So in effect, he owed me 5 grand because he'd done nothing for my film. I then went to the police. The police said, we're going to send CID round because this is quite a serious case. They came round and they spent 3 hours with me, and I built up this portfolio, everything from California, everything we'd gone through, the piece of paper he'd signed, the checks that he'd cashed for us. And the police said, look, this guy is committing what's called fraudulent misrepresentation. He's basically a con artist, and we hate to say this here, he's fucking clever. I went, well, all right, how is he clever? He went, we can't do anything about this because he's kept every amount under the amount that the police will deal with. It's almost like he knows exactly what's going on. So he knew what he was doing. He had staged everything. I had people from America calling me, asking me, could I speak to him about this producer? It went on to the point that when I confronted him about it eventually, he had cost us the house that we'd moved up here into. We were meant to rent for a year, then buy. We couldn't afford it. We then moved to another house that we couldn't afford the rent because it was still ongoing. And then we finally moved into a smaller house where we didn't actually have enough bedrooms for me and my stepdaughters and my daughter. So this guy has carried on making films. He has added his name to my short film as an executive producer, which won an award at Cannes in 2010. I took him to Cannes on the money that I'd given him, which was meant to be for our feature film. Yeah. And I still, even to this day, 10 years on, I get phone calls from people saying, I've just been asked to work for this job and I see he's worked with you. And I'm like, don't go near him. And then they go and do the job and then they phone me back later and say, oh, God, this guy's just ripped me off. He's just ruined our film. A guy who slags off fan films and then gets fame by making one of the worst Superman fan films ever made. Thing is, he's one of many people, and he's got, I think, 2 people around him who befriended me and then got me to introduce them to him. And then I found out they already knew him and they had played me and several other people into thinking that we knew them.
Yeah, this is a true scam you're talking about here. This is much more severe than a lot of them. A lot of them are just very iffy, but this is you actually getting ripped off.
Yeah, no, totally. We lost. Actually lost physically $6,000 to him, although I waived the grand because the casting director, she did her job. I lost $4,000 because he said, don't take that job, we're going to be filming in a month's time. So I lost $4,000 on work. And then we totaled up all the rehearsal rooms, scripts, legal stuff, meals, travel, everything we did was a further $6,500 over 18 months we spent on him.
I mean, the loss of work while you're doing that, while you're following a false line,
exactly,
is probably very significant on top of the actual kind of cash that you've put out there.
Yeah, it's totally. And the guy, he's still doing stuff. I've heard that he moved out of his girlfriend's house and had left a massive amount of debt where people were turning up to take stuff out of the house. It wasn't even his home. He'd got married. After he'd had the stroke, that was it. He'd got married and told everybody that he was in California working. And I walked into my local B&Q and found him stacking shelves. And when he saw me, he ran out the back of the warehouse.
I'll cut it short there with that undignified exit, as this is already a long episode, and I have to say many thanks to Darren there for having the courage to talk us through that and baring his soul about the whole thing. I'm very glad to report that he is now doing very well with his films, and I think he's gotten over the experience. I'll post links to Darren's website and social media in the show notes, but he is Scruffy Bear Picked, that's P-I-C-T at the end of that, on Twitter. He is on LinkedIn as Darren S. Cook. He's on Facebook, Scruffy Bear Pictures, and his website is scruffybear.com. So, I hope that you've found these two shows informative and interesting, and that it will help you to avoid a few of these sort of scams in the future. Look to my episodes on time wasters, toxic people, and bad collaborations for more of this sort of content if you feel that it would be helpful. These are very, very popular episodes and go well into many topics that others avoid. This episode and the last were both sponsored by Big Bull Productions, and more specifically the feature film Juvenile Delinquents. And I've pushed this sponsorship right to the end of the season because I was hoping that the lockdown might end and their movie would be in cinemas so you could go and see it. Sadly, the release of this feature film has fallen right on top of lockdown for most of us, so you can't at this particular time watch it in cinemas. What I do know, though, is that it is in film festivals, and hopefully when all this finishes, those festivals will start to appear again, or perhaps we'll go on to online versions. But because of this coronavirus, there's been a delay in that release. But they do have social media links, which I've got somewhere here, which is the hashtag on Instagram, JDS the movie. That's Juvenile Delinquents, obviously. JDS the movie is the hashtag, and that's their Insta, or the web page, www.jds.space, and they will update from there. I've seen the trailer for it, and it's excellent. Now, before I wind things up here, I want to thank once again all of the sponsors for this season, and also all of the guests that have come along. And I would extend that thanks to Ian O'Neill as well from the How They Did It Filmmaking podcast, who helped me with my first test episode on this. And I want to give a quick shout out as well to Rhoda from Hermione's Edge Wear. That's at Rhoda Wear, RHODAWEAR on Twitter, for being one of the few people who remembers that if you post an image of you listening to the show with a link to where people can listen to it, and I've noticed, Rhoda, you've not got the link in there, but you're still getting a shout out anyway, don't worry, then you will get a shout out on a future episode. Now, it's just something I do, it's a little promotional thing, I've had a few people do it, but it's always something you can do to help the show. It's just a small thing. Screen grab your phone, take a picture of your desktop if you're listening to it there, put it on your social networking with a hashtag, copy in at FilmProProdPod if it's on Twitter, or the Facebook is at FilmProProductivity, and let me know it's there, and it just helps to promote the show. And the other thing you can do, I always forget to do this, is if you want to drop me a line, remember that there is a SpeakPipe service which allows you to leave a 90-second audio clip for me via the website. That's on filmproproductivity.com/contact. You can do that. And you can email me if you've got questions for a mailbag show. If you want a mailbag show, and I'll plan one for the future, and you can email filmproproductivity@gmail.com. That's filmproproductivity@gmail.com with the words mailbag episode in the subject line. Now, this is the last episode of Season 4, but I'm going to announce something here that might worry a few of you, and that is that I am not going to announce a Season 5 at this time, as I have got to take a break from this show for a while, and that break potentially could be 6 months or more before you see another season. I'm not saying I'm not going to release any episodes. I might still release episodes, but you're not going to get a block of 12 episodes. Well, although I think this has ended up as 14 episodes kind of by accident, or maybe it's 13. I'm not sure. I haven't counted them. But this is not the end. I just need time to get my other creative projects done. And I do thank you very much for listening. Please stay subscribed, and you will catch new random in-between episodes as they are released. Be safe out there, be happy, and enjoy your life. And let me end today with the words of Eddie Izzard, who said, "Cats have a scam going. You buy the food, they eat the food, they go away. That's the deal." Now take control of your own destiny. Dodge these dodgy scammers. Keep on shooting, and join me next time, whenever that might be, on Film Pro Productivity and Success. The music that you're listening to right now is Adventures by Himitsu. You can view the show notes for this episode on the official website, filmproproductivity.com. You can follow my personal accounts on Twitter and Instagram at fight_director, or follow the show on Twitter at filmproprodpod, or on Facebook at filmproproductivity. Please continue to support the show by subscribing, spreading the word, and leaving an awesome review.